I'm going to be showing you the plasma fire here on this, I don't know, I guess it keeps cows here, maybe keeps some hay here. But first I want to show you that there's nothing for miles. That's a car right over there that's here at the Hot Springs, Meadow, Utah. I'm also going to show you some plasma fire evidence on these posts over here. But there's nothing for miles, in all directions. The town Meadow is a few miles away. And I come clear out here and once again find some plasma fire. So let's check this out first. Yeah. So you can see all these boards are burned at the bottom, charcoal for the bottom foot. Not even a foot, more like 8 or 10 inches some in many cases. Here, you can see where it burnt on the back side of the board. It looks like there was a board here, and one here, and one here. And it looks like it burnt on the back side of where this board, there's the nail that was going through the board. So this vertical board is completely gone, and it burned just right there. A real fire goes out here also, not just burning where the two boards come together. Likewise here. Another good indicator is this straight line burn, how it's highly burned on this side of the board, unburned on this side. You see a little bit of burn right here, but there's that unburned strip in between this burn and that burn. So here it's completely charcoal, here it's completely unburned, and it's a perfect straight line going up and down the board. Try not to get my shadow in the way there. Fire don't do that. Fire would have this flame wrapping around the board and coming up this side too. And it does the same thing right here. Burns this inner edge of this board to charcoal, leaves this edge unburned, leaving a perfectly straight line, nearly perfectly straight line all the way down. It's a little hard to get in there because the angle of the light. So, regular fire doesn't just burn in between the boards to charcoal and leave the surfaces unburned. Same pattern here. Burned on the inner edge of the board to charcoal. The outer edge completely unburned. Likewise here. You can see that perfectly straight line between the burn and unburn going all the way up the board. Fire doesn't burn straight lines like that on one edge and not the other. So you have that same pattern on both of these edges, and it's starting to do the same between these two boards and right here. But let's go around the backside. Oh yeah, I want to show you this first too. Yeah. Looks like there was a board nailed right there. There's the nail. And once again, it only burned where the two boards come together and there's a nail joining them. Likewise right here. So it looks like that might have been another board going across this way, and it was also nailed right there possibly, I'm not sure. But fire doesn't just burn where the nail is, where there's maybe another board joining, and then leave unburned over here and unburned over here. And then do the same pattern here where there's another board. And I'm gonna talk about the video I just watched by James True. Yeah. About emotional pedophilia. Seems almost like he might have made that video directly in response to me making videos about chalk body outline and EBT. That they are emotionally immature, and this also directly relates to childhood's end. So what I'm showing you here is that, if it'll focus on the right spot, it's highly charcoaled here and completely unburned there. Even though the line between burn and unburn goes back and forth a little bit, it's always a very fine line. Here you can see a little bit of burn, but 90% of it is a very fine line between charcoal and completely unburned, not even blackened a little bit. Even though the line curves back and forth a little bit, it's always a very fine line between burn and unburn. One of the patterns of plasma fire. Here's another good example. But the light's not at a very good angle. But the difference between totally charcoaled, you can see it's even left like an inch, half inch of charcoal on this edge of the board, yet left the outer edge unburned. A couple of things I'm going to focus on here. The way that it burned this board, just the middle of the board where the nails come through. There's a nail. 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 So it burns just the middle of this board, happening to be where the nails come through, leaving this edge and this edge completely unburned, not even blackened or scorched, for the whole length of the board. Fire doesn't do that. This is the indicator of some sort of electricity. This board kind of shows the same pattern, but not as clearly as the one above it. The other thing I'm going to look at, this has the opposite pattern of the backside. The backside, it was only burned this high on the bottoms of those boards. On this side, it's unburned for that same amount. Like the exact opposite pattern. You can see the burned spots here and there, and you might be able to argue whether or not the grass was here when this wood burned. But there's plenty other videos where I've shown I literally pull a burned piece of wood that's denser out from underneath a pile of more flammable, less dense material. But just to highlight this pattern right here, it has the same unburned pattern on this side as it does the opposite burn pattern on this side. Not sure how all this works, but I know fire doesn't do this. And these spots right here, that have an unburned spot surrounded by charcoal, and it repeats this pattern, and it looks like this board used to go across right here. And so people that are still trying to say, oh no, it's just regular fire, and that board was covering these spots and that's why they didn't burn. Tell yourself whatever you want. I've been doing this long enough. Not interested in debating with prepubescent children intellectually and emotionally. And so this might be the case. Here, let's check out this real quick since the light's on it. Fire doesn't just burn a little spot like this and leave everything else unburned. Maybe there was a nail between the boards right there and the metal attracted the electricity. Trying to keep my shadow off it, but as you can see, it went clear through the board, creating some charcoal with completely unburned wood all the way around the charcoal. Fire don't do that. And since this is the second time of me making this video, I know another spot that I'm gonna run and show you. But fire don't do any of this, guys. Tell yourself whatever you got to make you feel better. This might be one of those spots, unburned right there where the board is covering. Just like these spots that are unburned where the board was covering. But that don't explain this. And when you see 4 or 5 spots on it that can't be explained, forget about trying to explain the one where you can fit something into your worldview within the bookends of your known reality. These fires defy the laws of thermodynamics in some major ways. The fine line between burn and unburn. The spots of unburned that are left surrounded by charcoal. Notice how the fire follows this line around the indentation, leaving unburned where it dips in right there like it was only burning the surface. Fire, if it was flames crawling up the outside of this log post, would have pushed into there, not leave a very fine burn line and selectively choose between which pieces of wood it burns and which it doesn't. It's the flow of electricity that determines where gets burned and where doesn't. I've said before, it flows like water, and you can see sometimes a little molehill like this will be unburned and everything else is scorched, and then another molehill over there unburned, like it flows like water, and the high spots remain unburned. In this case, it's the low spots that remain unburned. Here's another example of that same pattern. Just like this one, follows the contour and the curvature of the concaved piece right there that remained unburned. So it does right here. Fire would not just leave an unburned spot here and an unburned spot there. And an unburned spot here, so that's 3, 4. Likewise, even here on this smaller indentation. 5, 6. Yeah. Very fine line between burn and unburn that follows the curvature, like anything that fell below a certain level of the surface of the wood did not get burned. Likewise here. Kind of stick your pinky right down in there. And here, I lost count. And here. Fire works its way right into any and all of those cracks. The flame does not just cruise along the surface and not dip into the contours. That's not how fire works. But that is how this electricity type of fire works. But I would say the most convincing for people who still need convincing is this board right here. It only burns along the center, almost like there was an electrical filament connecting between each of these nails. And that electrical filament, that arc between all the nails, created this strip of burn that runs between them, leaving unburned on both sides. Fire doesn't do that. And once you can acknowledge that fire doesn't do that, it's easier for you to see how fire doesn't do the rest of this, and this was all the same electrical energy. Even if you can tell yourself, well, it was another board covering that, and that's why that's not burned. Anyway, so I'm going to consider this idea. I literally just watched, here's another good example of what fire don't do. Burn in between the boards, but not the outer surface. You can see that it's charcoal there in between the boards. But not on the outer surface. Same pattern here. Between the boards burned. Same pattern right here. Look at this one. Burn strip right here, unburned there, and unburned there. What about all the stuff around it? How did the fire even get over to there? It would have had to burn its way over to there by burning everything leading up to. But that's not how this fire works. And so I got one more spot that I've spotted around the corner. Just another little isolated piece of plasma fire, like these little isolated pieces over here. It's right around the corner over here. Everything else in between here, I don't see any burn signatures. But you walk around to the back over here, and there's another spot. And so this emotional pedophilia James talks about in his most recent video might also be related to his eye of Ra. You see the charcoal here in the middle? Everything else all around remaining unburned. How do you get one little spot like this? And so there's another, anyway, so when he talks about emotional pedophilia, it's just these people are emotionally underdeveloped and incapable of being able to see because of the false premise that I have to be part of the tribe or I will not survive. And when you're the only one that can see this, and I can see that everyone else is refusing to or unable to see it the way you do, if I can see it for myself, I will no longer be part of the tribe and I will not survive, so I must not allow myself to see it. The way he describes this with the amygdala controlling what you can see and going, no, don't let him see that. He'll freak out too much. He's not mature enough to handle that. Just let him see nothing but twigs and just burnt sticks. Don't let him be able to see what everyone else can't see because he's not ready to separate from the tribe. Where the amygdala regulates the melanin and dopamine that goes to your eyeball and determines what you can and can't see based on your nervous system. James refers a lot to the polyvagal nerve, and maybe EBT and chalk body outline. They're so anal retentive, their butthole clenches up and they're just like, no, I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing but twigs and kindling. because they're afraid. See, when you're a child, you want to fit in with the group. All you want to do is find a group to fit in with. Once you hit your teenage years, you want to differentiate yourself from the group and develop a personal identity. And so you start doing things to individuate yourself and separate yourself, to give you unique identification characteristics, piercing your ears, getting a tattoo, etc. And you want to separate yourself from and differentiate yourself from your peers once you get into high school. But when you're in elementary school, all you want to do is fit in and find a group to fit in with. He's still in that childhood phase where he wants to fit in. He hasn't reached childhood's end. And so he's emotionally underdeveloped. And for me to expect him to be able to see what I can see is what James is now calling emotional pedophilia, recognizing that that is an underdeveloped, just because they're as big as you or their age is the same as you, they have stunted growth and arrested development in the area of emotional development. And that's what prevents them from being able to see what you can see, because they are not ready to feel what it feels like to see things that no one else can see. Or they really are agents. So here's a fence post where you can see the fine line between burn and unburn. And it's burned out 1/2 to 3/4 of the diameter of this post on one side and left the other side completely unburned. And the fine line between the two. And there's a couple other posts over here that I'm going to show you that have the same exact burn pattern. Okay, so there's one of these types of posts. A couple others I've propped up over there leaning up against the fence already. Some pretty cool hot springs around here. There's a bunch of fish in them too. So you get to let the fish nibble your toes and give you one of those foot pedicures while you're soaking. So I'm gonna go ahead and upload the other videos that I've made referring to chalk body outline and EBT as agents of the Antichrist. Referring to Christ as truth, they are in vehement opposition to the truth, ergo, agents of Antichrist. By Antichrist, I mean anti-truth. That there is an adversary, spirit or institution, that is lying to you by a way of omission, by not covering any of this in the media, or in your churches, or in the governmental institutions, or in the institutions of higher education. And they are adversarial to the truth. They want to keep you in the dark and unaware of this truth, and that they are working through him. He is doing their work. Whether that is a spiritual download that he gets from principalities of evil and wickedness in high places. You know how the Bible said it is not flesh and blood that we fight against, not enemies of flesh and blood, but principalities of wickedness and evil in high places. So that adversarial agent or element or entity that wants to keep you in the dark and unaware is using him to do that. Or he is just not ready to reach childhood's end. And on that note, I'll say I made a pretty good video on the way here, ranting and raving, but that's kind of, some people like those videos. They're the ones that dilate you, as James would say. In a bid that's something like coming out of the closet as a truthifarian. That the Mormons scripture and doctrine says that the bite of the apple in the Garden of Eden was a gift and a blessing, not the downfall of man. That makes them in direct opposition to the mainstream Christianity and about something so fundamental as what they call the original sin. Maybe it's some combination of these things. I'm still learning. I've said for a very long time now that a greater phenomenon to me, in my mind, than the trees burning on the inside and all the other forms of plasma fire, houses burning down, leaving the trees standing, melting the engine blocks and rims and glass out of cars, an even greater phenomenon to me than the plasma fire itself is the fact that no one else can see it. And maybe all of these things give us an understanding as to why no one else can see it. The Eye of Ra by James True, his explanation of the amygdala controlling the melanin and the dopamine to your eye, only allowing you to see what you are capable of handling, and it's directly connected to your nervous system. As soon as you get afraid or nervous or scared, it dials it back down. This is something I said. God's directly connected to your nervous system and knows exactly what you can and can't handle and only allows you to see what you're capable of seeing in order to not violate your free will and show you things that'll throw you into shock. But this chalk body outline and EBT thing is giving us showcasing a case study in psychology of how and why the general public is unable to see what I and many others on this channel can see. And so, as much as cringeworthy as it is, I don't want to end up like catfish going after scientifically. But this is unlike any other internet beef between content creators. I'm not a content creator. This is not my content. This is free for all to go out in their local neck of the woods, make a video of their own. They don't even have to mention my name, though it would be dishonest to deny your viewers access to the vast library I've accumulated once you're already aware of it. I'm not a content creator. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm just a regular guy who can see what everyone else can't see, and using YouTube as a platform to share what I can see with others. And so, demonstration being presented by Chalkbody and EBT gives us a chance to look into that psychological phenomenon that is even greater shock and awe to me than the plasma fire itself, is the fact that I'm still the only one that can see it. And I have never seen anyone demonstrate the behavioral patterns and characteristics that they're demonstrating. Everyone goes through the initial phases. Denial, negotiation, anger, depression, acceptance. Those are the 5 stages of grief. When you're grieving the end of your self-image and worldview because you can see that I'm showing you things that no one else can see, that changes your perception of everyone else around you. When you can see that I'm showing you things that none of the institutions are sharing with you, but you know damn well they're aware of, that changes your perception of those institutions. The media, the politicians, presidents and prime ministers around the world, educational institutions, and churches are all keeping their lips sealed about plasma fire, and it is a worldwide phenomenon. So, when you're grieving the death of your self-image and worldview, you go through all those 5 stages: denial, negotiation, anger, depression, and acceptance. Maybe they're lashing out at me in their vehement opposition to this truth. They are not just in denial. They are in vehement opposition to this truth, to the point of doing character assassinations against myself. Also, the truth goes through 3 phases. First, it's mocked and ridiculed. Second, it's violently and vehemently opposed. Third, it is accepted as if it was always known to be true. Maybe they're on the second phase of that process. First, it's a combination of both, mocked and ridiculed. Ha ha, this guy's crazy. Ha ha ha. Then violently and vehemently opposed, which is the demonstration of behaviors that they're engaged in now, to the point of doing character assassination and anything they can to try to undermine the truth that is, in fact, self-evident and that does speak for itself regarding these plasma fires, before it becomes something that everyone just says everyone always knew. Yeah, everyone always knew that. We're still in those earlier phases.